Okay, so in this video, we will be discussing yung risk and how do we use risk or in particular oriented risk and ordered risk and forest to solve the equivalence problem. So, ano may equivalence problem? So, let's try to simplify it first. So, imagine, halimbawa, nasa isang room kayo with N people and you know a certain a certain subset of pairs of people that are siblings na magkapatid. So, the question is, given yung knowledge ng subset ng pair na yun, can you create an algorithm that will determine whether for any two people in the room, malalaman natin kung siblings sila or hindi. So, example, we know that Mark and Anna are siblings. We know also that Joe and Anna are siblings. We know that Anna and Mark are siblings. And we know that Jerome and Ivan are siblings. So, when we deduce whether Anna and Jay are siblings or Jerome and Joe, so given this input, and we deduce these things. So, well, madali siyang makita kasi halimbawa, we know that Mark and Jay are siblings. Tapos Joe and Anna are siblings. We know also that Anna and Mark are siblings. So, it is easy to deduce na si Anna sa si Jay, siblings na sila. Si Jerome sa si Joe, since wala tayong makitang link sa kanila, we can say na hindi sila siblings. Okay, so, that seems to be a pretty trivial problem kasi intelligent tayo eh. Parang kaya natin maintindihan yun. Kaya natin gumawa ng logical conclusion. However, we need to create a program that will do this. So, how can we make the program intelligent enough para makagawa siya ng mga conclusions na nagagawa natin? So, yun yung essence ng equivalence problem. Formally, kapag sinabi natin equivalence problem, ito yung formal na definition niya. So, given an equivalence relation, and a set of relationships of the form I equals. So yung it equals, let it be any generic na equivalence relation. So given tayo ng set ng pairs ng mga related na element, so si I related si J. So may set tayo na ganon. For any pairs dun sa set natin, can we create an algorithm that will deduce whether any two pairs galing dun sa set are related with one another. So, given tayo ng set ng relations, from those set, pwede pa tayong makagawa ng algorithm. So, we need to create an algorithm that will deduce whether for each pair, malalaman natin kung related ba sila or hindi. So, when we say equivalence relation, so I believe na-encounter nyo naman na ito sa CS32 before, it's reflexive. So, ibig sabihin, X is related to X, or Y is related to Y. So, an element is related to itself. Pangalawa, it's symmetric. If X is related to Y, then Y is also related to X. Pangatlo, it's transitive. If X is related to Y, and Y is related to Z, therefore, X is related to Z. So, yun yung tatlong properties na nagsasabi na kailangan para magkaroon tayo ng equivalence relation. Okay? Let's look at this simple example. So, given tayo na may set tayo na set S, na ang elements ay 1 to 9, and we know this relationship, alam natin na si 2 related sa kay 5, si 3 related sa kay 8, si 1 related sa kay 4, si 3 related sa kay 9, 2 is related to 1, 3 is related to 6, and 2 is related to 7. So we have this pair na alam natin, from this pair, can we deduce whether 1 is related to 7 or 5 is related to 8? So we can see that 2 is related to 1 and 2 is related to 7. we cannot use transitivity yet kasi hindi ganun yung form. If 2 is related to 1 and 2 is related to 7, and we deduce if 1 is related to 7. So we need to make it, to arrange muna yung form. So since si 2 related sa I1, si 1 related sa I2 because of being symmetric. And then, kung si 1 related sa I2, si 2 related sa I7, therefore si 1 related sa I7 by transitivity. With 5 and 8, we don't know, and so we can see that they are not related with one another. Again, tulad ng sinabi ko earlier, hindi naman mahirap isipin yun. Parang, we can deduce kasi may logic naman behind that. However, creating a program that will do that for us might be not that easy to do. So, imagine, anong naiisip natin ngayon? Mali tayo mag-brute force. Ilista natin lahat ng possible relationships. Tapos nun, i-look up natin kung existing ba ang relationship or hindi. That's one thing. The second thing that we can do, and that what we will be doing later on, is i-partition natin yung elements natin. Okay? So what do we mean when we partition elements? So, ito yung problem natin. So initially, ilagay natin sila into separate sets. And then we know that 2 is related to 5. So, ilalagay natin ngayon si 5 dun sa set with 2. So, ito na sila. So, parang mini-merge natin sila. And we also know that 3 is related to 8. So, ganun din. Ilalagay din natin sila into one set. And we know that 1 is related to 4. So, ilalagay din natin sila. And then 3 is related to 9. So, 3, 8, isasama natin sa kanya si 9. We know that 4 is related to 1. So, ilalagay natin si 5 sa kasi 1, 4 into 1 set. I-merge natin to, magiging ganito. 3 is related to 6. So, si 6, ilalagay natin sa set na to, magiging ganito yon. And finally, 2 is related to 7. So, yung 7 dito, ilalagay natin dito sa set na to. So, ano yung nakita natin? We were able to partition yung original na set natin into disjoint components. So, to deduce whether 1 is related to 7 or 5 is related to 8, it's just a matter of looking whether they belong to the same set or not. Since 1 and 7 belong to the same set, then they are related. Since 5 and 8 do not belong to the same set, then they are not related. So, from having a brute force solution, meron tayong mas mukhang simpleng way of solving that. So, yung next na question ngayon natin is, how do we implement this? So, yung questions natin ay, number 1, how do we represent yung equivalent classes dun sa memory ng computer natin? When we say equivalent classes, sila yung partition. So, how do we represent this and how do we represent this sa memory ng computer natin? Pangalawa, how do we determine whether two objects belong to the same equivalent class? In this case, malalaman natin if they belong to the same set, then they belong to the same equivalent class. Pero kapag program na natin yon, medyo challenging naman na i-brute force natin para malaman if they belong to the same class. Number 3, how do we merge equivalent classes? So yung ginagawa natin earlier, this is an equivalent class, this is an equivalent class. How do we merge them? So remember, kailangan natin siyang i-program. So those questions, kailangan natin masagot para ma-program natin siya. So number 1, how do we represent yung equivalent classes sa memory ng computer natin? Obviously, pwede tayo gumamit ng oriented trees. So each equivalent class will have will belong to an oriented tree. At the same time, since yung partition, kapag nag-partition tayo, disjoint yung element, ganun din yung oriented tree, di ba? Kung ilalagay na isang forest, disjoint sila. Later on, you will see how we can actually represent yung forest using an array. So, we will do that later. Second question, how do we determine if two objects belong to the same equivalence classes? So since each equivalence class is represented by an oriented tree, the question of how do we determine if two objects belong to the same equivalence class is just similar to the question of determining whether two nodes belong to the same tree. And how do we know if two nodes belong to the same tree? What we will do is we will look for the root of the tree that contains the node, and we will look for the root of the tree that will contain the other node. If they have the same root, if they have a common root, then they are equivalent, meaning they belong to the same equivalence class. If they have different roots, then they don't belong to the same equivalence class. Finally, how do we merge equivalence classes? So it's just a matter of making one of the root as the father of the other root. So parang ito sa ito, i-merge natin sila. So gagawin lang natin ito, gagawin natin siyang father ng root na to. And basically, we are able to merge the two created trees. Okay? So those are the three important things that we have to know when we try to develop the algorithm or when we try to implement the algorithm that will solve the equivalence problem. How do you do that actually? How do you implement the solution? That will be your reading assignment. So naglagay ako sa class website natin ng material that you can look at so that you will learn how forest can be used, trees and forest can be used to solve the equivalence problem.